Good morning. I have the privilege of moderating our next panel this morning. It's the future of the workplace. How will employers meet the needs of tomorrow's workforce? And as we saw from the few speakers that we just had moments ago, it certainly appears that that workforce is going to be diverse and interested in a lot of very interesting and challenging needs. So we certainly all have our work cut out for us as HR professionals. So when Jason and Allison Klausner first came to us to talk about this particular panel, those of us that were asked to speak to it said, this is great. So you said we have 4 or 5 hours to talk about it. And they, of course, laughed hysterically and said, no, you've got 1 hour, including questions. And then we all fainted and then got back up. And so had to have a series of phone calls and emails to try to figure out how on earth are we going to tackle the future of the workplace in such a short period of time. And so ultimately what we decided to do was really answer the question by breaking up what we thought the future of the workplace looked like into 3 buckets. And that was, of course, focusing on our day jobs, right? Thinking about human capital, and thinking about how human capital is affected by the future of the workplace. Thinking about the 3 different goals, the business goals, the shareholder value, thinking about the consumer's value, et cetera. And Kevin is going to talk a little bit about that after I introduce all of our speakers. We're then going to think about the people, right, those human capital folks themselves, and what it means for the folks within your organizations and what the future looks like for them. And then we're going to talk more specifically about benefits and what these really incredible panelists think the future of benefits is going to look like. So we broke out sort of the future of work or the workplace into those 3 buckets, and each of our panelists is going to speak and address those particular issues. And then hopefully you're going to see a little bit of sparring among them. We've spent some time, friendly sparring, among the speakers, questioning each other and talking a little bit about their reflections within their organization. So without further ado, let me just remind you who we've got here on the stage. I have the privilege of having Kevin Avery, who's the Manager of Federal Government Affairs at ConocoPhillips. Thank you for joining us, Kevin. Jennifer Graham-Johnson, who's the Chief Human Resource Officer over at WestRock. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us. Tom Sondergeld. Sondergeld. Thank you. VP of HRIS, Global Benefits and Mobility over at Walgreens Boots Alliance. And I use Boots products, so I told him how pleased I was and that maybe we could have a quid pro quo afterwards and he could get me some more cream. And then we've got Fred Thiele, who's the General Manager, Global Benefits of Microsoft. So thank you so much for joining us. This is an outstanding panel, and I'm privileged to have all of you here. So before we begin, just a couple reminders. I have zero doubt that you all will have some thoughts, some comments. Maybe you'll disagree with some of the things that these folks are talking about on the panel. That's why we've got the app. Please start sending in your questions, some of your comments, your exasperations through the app, because we'll see those questions coming in. In order to stay to our 4-hour minimum that Jason gave us, we are going to actually need to keep the questions until the very end, but I promise we will get to them, and we're going to try to really have a solid period of time, because I suspect it's going to be a really fun discussion afterwards. So without further ado, I think what we want to do is start with Kevin, sure, so you can talk a little bit about the business issues.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much. And I want to first start by thanking the American Benefits Council for all of the support they give to government affairs professionals in Washington as we deal with the federal policies governing human resource and benefits issues. And congratulations on what is a terrific symposium. And thank you for inviting me. When we got together and talked about our presentation, the question I was given was, how will the future use of human capital affect meeting business goals? And I kind of turned that around and wanted to kind of figure out, well, what's the business goal first? You know, the ultimate business goal for at least me and my company is maximizing shareholder value. That would be the ultimate business goal. You get there in a lot of different ways, and our various business units at ConocoPhillips have different sets of business goals. But if I could just come up with sort of a generic kind of thing, is that we try to operate safely, responsibly, sustainably, and cost effectively. And all of these are going to add to and enhance shareholder value. Our human capital need to accomplish that business goal is that we want the best people for every job that we have at ConocoPhillips. I would submit that that is not going to change. That was what we needed 20 years ago. I wasn't at the company then. It's what we need now, and it's what we're going to need in the future. And I think that's true for every company represented here and every company represented in this room. As we all know, the nature of work will change. For us, technology drives a lot of that. We are now going toward more automation. It is redefining the work people do and where they do it. We are experimenting with drones in the industry to go to wells and fly around and check for leaks, detect any other kinds of problems, spills, what have you. All of that is being monitored at a central control room. Well, if you're a future employee, you may decide, well, I could monitor and operate drones from my house. And that's going to be a human capital need that we may need to address at some point in the future. And I know we'll probably get into a lot of that discussion here. That automation, that technology promotes safety and cost savings. So you're accomplishing two of the other items that I mentioned at the top of my presentation. How we attract good workers, the best possible people for every job that we have, is likewise going to change because their demands are going to be different. Leave policies, and we'll discuss that more, is one way to do it. We are trying to be more diverse and figuring out how to attract a more diverse group. We hire a lot of folks who are scientists. STEM programs are very important, and minorities and women are underrepresented in those fields. We've got to try to figure out a way how to boost that because we see that as an important driver and something that future workers want in the workplace. Flexible scheduling, work-life balance, all of these more and more are becoming very important to our employees at ConocoPhillips. We've also found that our employees are turning to employers, us, to fill gaps in areas that they aren't getting. And two examples come to mind. The Family and Medical Leave Act. I actually was working on the Hill when that passed in 1993, a long time ago now. But that gives 12 weeks of unpaid leave for family emergencies, having the birth of a child, what have you. Most employees, and I would, by a show of hands, I'd love to see how many folks here can go 12 weeks without getting paid. Our employees have turned to us. We need paid leave, and we have responded. It is a way to attract the best people for every job that we have. Another area is in the area of LGBTQ rights. You are protected under the law from discrimination based on race, religion, national origin, disability, age, gender. not necessarily your sexual orientation. So they have come to us. And we have clarified, oh no, here, you have the same rights as everybody else. And that's the way we're going to operate. I don't know what the future may hold in terms of what people are going to want and what, I won't get into the prediction business, I got out of that with the election this past time around. But, like everybody else. But I don't know what the future will hold. One thing that came to my mind was a need for, and I'd love to hear what people's thoughts are. Employees may decide, I don't have enough money in that 529 plan, I need it for college. How am I going to send my kids to school? Is that a benefit that some employers will turn to? So I will stop there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jennifer, on to the next subject. Let's talk about some other topics related to people goals.
Okay. I've been allotted 90 minutes of our 4-hour time frame, so here we go. And with this topic, I could talk for days. But there's 4 things I think are changes that employers need to be prepared for, and some of these are with us right now and growing. But the first thing is just, what is an employee? And if you think back many decades ago, you know, an employee got in his car and he drove to his office building and he was there at 8 and he left at 5, and he or she, they wore a very nice outfit and they went to that same place for probably their whole career. And they couldn't even think about working on the weekend. The technology just was not there. I've seen this in like black and white TV shows that used to exist. And today what we have, and somebody talked about it earlier this morning, is different types of workers. So you have the gig economy where people are just, you know, dropping in here and there at different companies and doing work for a little while as a contractor, and then they move on. And these are people that likely aren't getting retirement and medical, which our survey this morning said is pretty important to most people. But these are people who have said, above that, I want flexibility and freedom. So that's the choice that they've made. But then we also have a change with our traditional full-time employees that we take on in maybe how long they stay with us. They may not, I've been at my employer 24 and a half years, and I think a lot of young people today would say, my God, I would never do that. I said that when I went there, I think. So we're going to have shorter term employees, and employers need to be okay and not think it's a failure if somebody leaves them after 3 years. Because chances are they're not leaving because of the company or because of the manager. They're leaving just to get a different experience. And the caution I think we have is, even if a lot of folks we know are only going to stay a few years, we still have to invest in training and developing those people and offering them growth opportunities. We can't shut that down just because we think, oh, 3-5 years from now they're going to be somebody else's employees. I also think that is going to make succession planning pretty interesting in the future. Another topic would be, I started out thinking about this as the multiple generations in the workforce, and you have 4, 5, 6 generations in the workforce right now. I don't think a lot of changes we're seeing and we're blaming the millennials for, I'm not sure it's really an age-based thing. I think technology is behind all this. And the technology that no matter what your age is, you are using more and more of outside of work, it's kind of seeping into while you're at work, you're starting to expect the same kind of possibilities. So, and there are 60-year-olds who are far better at technology and more comfortable and capable than some 25-year-olds, and vice versa. I think in the future, more of everybody is going to be more comfortable with more technology. That's just where we're going. So how this might play out is, many of you may have sat down Friday or Saturday last week and completed your holiday shopping, and by now those packages, hopefully in a WestRock package, have probably been delivered to your house, wrapped with notes that you dictated, and you're just done. So then you go to work and you have a benefits question and somebody's like, yeah, we'll get back to you with the answer in 2 days. Or you're trying to get a vendor paid and it's like, yeah, it's 4 days to get a check out of AP. Well, that's not the life that we're experiencing outside. So this is the clash that we have from technology, and we as employers on all fronts, not just HR, have to think about bringing that ease and what people are becoming accustomed to into the workplace. Customization is another thing. You know, I can get candy with my name and birthday on it, you know, delivered almost tomorrow. So why can't I pick the day I want to get paid on? Or why can't I pick the hours that I'm going to work? So I've heard another topic raised this morning as well about work and life. And there is no balance, but it's an equation. And I think we're looking at a shift. I think my kids look at me and say, oh, I will never work that much. You just work too much. And I think there's a lot of young people out there looking at their parents now saying, ugh, I don't know if that's what I want. And there's a lot of people that are working that hard that are saying, oh, I think enough's enough. And you know, just because we can be connected 24/7 almost anywhere in the world, it doesn't mean we have to be. But yet many of us choose to do that. And we choose to let work invade our vacations and our otherwise time off for a variety of reasons, for a whole bunch of reasons. Some employer-imposed, some self-imposed. But I think we're going to see a shift, and people will want more life in that equation. I think the global nature of corporations today, I'm sure many of you work with a lot of people in other countries, and it's different. I had a bunch of union folks together one day, and only the Americans were complaining about their hours worked. And the guys from Ireland were like, I wasn't going to open my mouth about my 32-hour work week. Somewhere there's a happy medium. Neither one of them may be the right thing, but somewhere there's a happy medium. And I think employers who can find the way to bring more life into that equation with policies, with their culture, with their unwritten rules of what's okay and what's not okay, are going to win in that area. The final thing I would raise as a change is around just how employees are choosing or selecting their employers. It's not just pay and benefits anymore. They want an environment where they feel respected, where they feel capable, so they've been trained to do their best work for their current job. And oh, by the way, they're being developed to do a bigger job, whether that's with you or not with you in the future. They want to work where diversity is truly valued and inclusion is real. They want to know that their work matters, that there's a purpose behind their work, whatever excites them. And they want a good corporate citizen. They want to know that company is supporting people working, volunteering, and financially, you know, all the good things going on out there in the world. So these are going to be ways that employees are going to be looking to employers to differentiate themselves in that selection process. I'll pass it over to.
So there's an awful lot to unpack. I'll just focus on two things. One is the multi-generational workforce, and the other is the gig economy and how we see it unfolding at Microsoft. So under the multi-generational topic, I think we heard a lot already on what that is. We've done our own inquiry into that among the generations that are in the Microsoft workforce. We've done focus groups. We're curious about that. We hear a lot that the millennials are supposedly this different species, and so we studied them under glass. No, we didn't do it that way. But what we found is remarkably, or maybe not remarkably, in many respects, they're the same, you know, as any other generation, particularly as they get older, as they no longer are millennials, as there's something else. We did find one area where there's a difference of opinion, maybe from the baby boomers to the millennials, and that is the view of time away. We found that they really value time away at the millennial stage. But as far as, you know, healthcare, retirement, my God, you know, all of that, you know, borne out by the research that from public opinion strategies that Jason shared. I mean, I was nodding in agreement, and he showed the difference too. I think the millennials valued more time away, more than the baby boomers in his survey. We saw the same thing. But by and large, I think it's a kind of a fool's errand to say maybe there's something different and we've got to do radically different things. Yes, you have to do some different things, but radically, not so much. The purpose, social responsibility absolutely comes into play with all employees, but again, particularly with the millennials. Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So one of the ways we sell Microsoft to employees is you can come here and you can change the world. The applications you'll be working on will find footing everywhere in the world and can solve some of our greatest problems, maybe not world hunger, but possibly climate change and some other things. So that really animates people to come here, especially when they're getting bid for by a lot of companies with high pay and other benefits in the economy we find ourselves in. Secondly, I want to talk about gig. We're spending a lot of time thinking about gig as well. Microsoft, we'd like to be both the employer of choice and the gig of choice. We're thinking differently about the way work is done. Thinking about, in many cases, taskifying work, if you will. Does it have to be done by a traditional W-2 employee? Can it be done in the gig world through a human cloud platform? We've got some pilots going, looking at that. Things like customer support work, content creation and design, things that can be kind of parsed out, if you will, parceled out. We're finding that that's very fertile ground for potentially gig work. So we're excited about that. We're also looking at possibly offering our own employees gig opportunities. So you're doing one job, but you have a portion of your time kind of walled off that you can kind of bid yourself out within the company to do other things. That helps their development, it helps their job satisfaction.
Great. So, your comments kind of crack me up because I went to the OB recently and I saw something up on the wall that cracked me up. It said, it was a picture of a woman who was pregnant getting a sonogram, and her doctor said, your baby's developing nicely. Would you like to send him an email?
Oh my gosh.
So we were talking about, the development of technology, and you don't even know what kind of questions you should be asking in the future about technology. So who knows what HR will be doing in the future. So speaking of the benefits we may not even know we're going to have to provide in the future, Tom, maybe you can help us think about what Walgreens and Boots is thinking about in terms of, we're looking at this, new gig population as well as your traditional employee populations, and coupling that with some new types of business goals that Fred was talking about earlier, and some of the new issues that I know your organization is thinking about. So kind of putting all of that together, how do you think that that's going to affect the way your organization thinks about benefits in the future?
Yeah, so Walgreens has been through quite a journey under me. We tried the private exchange because it was the right thing to do for us at the right time. The largest employer to do it. We learned a ton through that process. And in that learning, we've come out of it with a new thought process after doing some surveys, after looking at our vast population of over 250,000, right now with Rite Aid, about 300,000 employees nationally in the United States, 450,000 worldwide. It's a big population to try to address. And we have the 5 or 6 generations that exist in our workforce today. We also have a milieu of workforce. We have the manufacturing workforce in our distribution centers. We have the day-to-day workforce in our stores. We have the professional workforce in our pharmacists. We have the IT workforce in the way we do our economics with our omni-channel approach. And then we have our professional workforce behind the scenes that do a ton of support for all that activity in the United States. When you're trying to address that population, we have found that you cannot just have 1 or 2 options. And so we've stayed in an exchange model, self-insured, but we offer a ton of choice. And a lot of people have said, well, Tom, in doing that choice, aren't you worried about adverse selection? And the way we get around that is, one, we test for it, and two, there is a ton of tools that help people choose the benefit the right way. And so this year, we rolled out some 50 choices for our team members across the country during a benefit enrollment period that consisted of 3 weeks in a retail workforce. That when I started in this job in 2011, everybody told me, you will never get them to enroll online, Tom. Don't roll out an online benefit. And when we rolled out the exchange, we had 97% of our population enroll online. And that continues to today. And they do it with efficiency. They take about 45 minutes to do their benefits. We've always said, well, if you buy shoes, you do it about 3 hours on average. If you buy a car, you do it about 6 hours on average. Why shouldn't you spend 45 minutes a year looking at your benefits? So we say, we want you to take that time. And then we give them all the tools that they can muster. Some like to go through a tool that allows them to just say what they like to have, and it gives them the benefit they should offer. Some of it looks at what they've paid in the past in claims history and the doctors they've seen, and it presents them with the options that are better for them for this year. So a lot of that choice is nullified in the risk pattern because we give them good tools and allow them to make the choice that's appropriate for them. But I'll tell you where the future is going, and what we're hearing from our team members is they want even more flexibility. They want to be able to determine to buy a benefit when they want to buy a benefit. So a woman today in our workforce may not know that in June she's going to be pregnant. How can she plan for that today if we're enrolling in an annual benefit in November for January and our disability benefit is pretty stagnant and it may not be enough for her and her family? But wouldn't it be cool if in February, when she decided to now have a baby or learned she was going to, that she could then pick up the disability benefit and buy more of it out of a flexible benefit pool that she had available to her? Or if a man wanted to have paternity or adopt a kid with his partner, they could then go out and buy more PTO to cover the time that they want to have together as they foster that child. That flexibility is where we are starting to turn our focus. And it's as far as I want to do more in my 401k or I want to do less in my 401k, and I want to take the trade-off of that 401k money and I want to put it somewhere else for a while because I need that flexibility in my portfolio. That flexibility is what we're seeing the next avenue for us to go, because maintaining this workforce that is so diverse and covers such a wide spectrum of population, including the aging, who have completely different needs, who get no focus today at all, because we're all so focused on the millennials and the Generation Z, we forget about the aging population. They all need that flexibility that I cannot determine with my 5 staff anymore. I don't have the capability. And giving people that flexibility and the ability to do that, even to the point where we may be able to offer a medical benefit that is flexible enough in the year for them to buy up and buy down in the medical benefit, depending on what their needs are in the next ensuing months. How many of you know that you might need to have a surgery in April of next year? You do not know. But yet you're buying a medical benefit now for January that might cover you and may not cover you in April. But wouldn't it be cool if in March, when you knew you had to do that, you could buy a little bit more and supplant yourself a little bit higher? I'm talking about radically changing the way we do traditional benefits. Traditional benefits, the way they do them today, I don't think will hold up against this workforce in the gig economy and in all of the struggles that we're facing with the flexibility of our workforce. So, if any of you heard me talk before, I tend to be a very radical person. I believe in upsetting the market because I do not believe the market should dictate how we run our lives. I think we should dictate how the market addresses us. And so it's why we've joined the Health Transformation Alliance, and it's why I push for differentiation of benefits all the time. The second thing we concentrate on a lot in our world, and you'll see some of this in the papers that are coming out from the Mercer study, is we're spending a lot of time on the delivery of health care. And so we have a huge problem around cost. We're a retailer. Our margins are really low. We keep them that way, and so I don't have a lot of money to spend on, my $1 billion healthcare budget can't go up every year, and I've got to trend it down. And we've really struggled hard to figure out a different way to break the delivery of healthcare. And we've done that with our carrier partners in a very new approach with a hyper advocate called a care coordinator that sits in the middle of all the care at the carrier's house in a shared savings model that drives down healthcare. And we've seen it through 2017, and we're going to see it through 2018. So I think those focuses and that high level of engagement in those programs are really going to address some of the concerns of the workforce that you've heard about from the panelists today.
Interesting. And I could literally hear like hundreds of brains going, adverse selection, adverse selection. So, yeah, or a couple to my left. So, yeah, so yes, radical, absolutely. And I'm sure everyone will try to tackle you afterwards and ask you, how are you getting that done? How are you getting that done? So, yeah, you can talk to him afterwards. Kevin, any thoughts on what you just heard from your compatriot?
I am curious about whether there are any policy considerations, legal considerations that need to be changed
Yes.
in
ERISA
order to
needs
facilitate
change.
this.
COBRA needs to change.
How difficult has that been within the current
It's hard.
healthcare?
Yeah, I mean, if some of the things we're talking about doing will need tax law change because it'll upset the tax-free benefit. It'll need ERISA and DOL change because of the way they clamp down on some of these written rules from 30 years ago, and it'll need COBRA change. So I'm not saying we're going to be able to do this now. I'm saying that we're advocating for a way to look at this in a different way to address this demanding workforce that's asking for flexibility.
Fred, I think you had some thoughts that you wanted to share on some benefit goals.
Just quickly on gig, because I have a quick anecdote to share. We acquired a company that recruits gamers to play on our platform, Xbox. And there are people that watch these gamers. They're professional gamers. They're very good at what they do. And then we're able to sell, advertisements around that. So I had a senior HR director come to me within the past couple months and say, we're really in a fiery recruiting effort for these gamers. It would be really great. Right now they would be these freelancers, right? We wouldn't hire them as employees. It'd be really great if I could offer them benefits, healthcare, retirement. I had to get the smelling salts out for my lawyer, counsel, because you can imagine the problems that would create, especially Microsoft is the home of Vizcaíno versus Microsoft. But it was a great question. It was a great question because we do see that, and again, relating it to the benefits issue, we see in this world of gig work or freelance work that it is largely, I'll say cash-based, obviously, base pay-based or whatever you want to call it, it's pay-based. Benefits usually aren't a part of the equation if you think of an Uber driver, if you think of one of these gamers. So we are being challenged in this regard. I did not have an easy answer for that individual. The short-term answer was no. But that doesn't mean we're closed-minded. But just so that's on the gig thing. And lastly, just in general, I think kind of a punctuation or an exclamation mark on benefits. We know that we are part of the competitive equation. I mean, we're just not I know most of you know this already, but we're not just on the side. I don't think a month goes by that I don't hear from our staffing people telling us how, notwithstanding all the money we're putting out there for new hires against some of the great tech names that compete against us, that not more oftentimes than not, but in a lot of cases, it's benefits that actually wins the compete for the talent. I get these messages about our family leave. We increased our family leave. We increased some of our other voluntary benefits. And our staffing and recruiting people know to kind of emphasize that. So again, this is in the traditional side of the equation. But I think we're more relevant than we've ever been. And we just need kind of on the gig side, maybe legislation or whatnot, regulation to kind of catch up to understand that this is really a new thing that we're going to have to contend with. And if we're stuck with those same old rules, we can't do it. I did see someone ask on the screen, I'll just relate it real quickly, the question of whether people kind of do gig voluntarily or involuntarily. I think that's an important thing. There's a lot of reporting on this. There's no doubt that there is an involuntary portion of the gig population, kind of call it the underemployed, the people that are doing it because they don't have any options today. But that is not to obscure the fact that there is a large number that, for the reasons that we've all said about flexibility in their life, life revolving around work and not the other way around, that people are increasingly choosing that, and we're betting that within about 3 to 5 years that could actually flip, that our view of, well, I'm a full-time employee, that's kind of the bomb, that being the gig person, if we can catch up around the benefits, that actually might be the preferred way of doing things if other things catch up.
Now, this is a question actually to the four of you. Define what the benefits of the future look like. So we all know what traditional benefits are today. And we're talking a lot right now about, and we've all discussed before ad nauseum, I'm sure, at all of these different conferences, right? Well, the slow death of the defined benefit retirement plan, and the defined contribution retirement plan is really kind of boring now, and who knows what's going to happen with traditional health care? Will we have a single payer system? Gasp, we can't even talk about that really, and so who knows what's going to happen with traditional, right? Is that going to be the way we go in the future? Someone mentioned voluntary benefits. Someone else mentioned, paid time off. What do the benefits of the future even look like? What will the benefits be that an employer needs to be focused on? Define benefits.
I'll start.
Go ahead.
I go back to we need to redefine what we mean by the word benefits, and I think we could say it is the benefits of working at fill in the blank, Microsoft or WestRock or wherever you're going to work, and it is broad, and it is. I think we do have to be careful not to make it too complex. So your 50 offerings just blows my mind. But so it is. We were talking about financial education. Don't talk to people about saving for retirement who have their own student loan debt and maybe already have a young child who they're also thinking about, how am I going to pay for them to go to college? Mm-hmm. So I think we just have to it's adding more. We're still going to need medical. We're still going to need to offer some sort of retirement savings and life insurance and things like that. But it's putting in time off to go do volunteer work is part of the package. Maybe it's having input into where the company donates its money for nonprofits. It's letting me choose what I wear to work, letting me have the ability to swap shifts, just a mechanism to do that if you're a shift worker, something like that. It's gonna be a lot of things. I mean, I think the student loan repayment programs that are out there right now are somewhat new, and I don't know how many companies are offering that, but it's that sort of thing that we just have to be a little broader. And then it is also what I talked about. It's got to be, I come to work, I am respected, I am empowered, I am capable because I have been trained, and I feel like there is development. Somebody's investing in my ability to do more here. So it's big. It is a big package and not a narrow retirement and medical package.
But let me challenge the notion of more is not better. How many of you shop on Best Buy at all? Or Amazon or anywhere? Is there one product? Are there two products? No. You spend an inordinate amount of time on those websites using their search tools to narrow down your choices for the 60,000 TVs that sit out there. You use tools off to the side, you narrow your choices down, and then when you get to the 72-inch TV, you pick the vendor or you pick the choice, but from 72-inch TVs, there are still 50 choices, and for some reason, we're all able to navigate that world. But yet when we talk about benefits, we think that our population is numb. They're not that numb, and I think if we treat them as numb, we're not making them good consumers of healthcare. So we have given our people choice, and I will tell you, we have 170,000 people who enroll every year with all of those choices, and they do just fine because the tools that are there do the same thing that the tools you have on all those other purchasing sites to make their choice. And they make their choice based on their personal needs, not based on some presumption that I have set up around what they might need. So I just challenge that notion. I know that many of you have said we have to narrow our choices for our people. I think that's a dangerous notion in this world of an economy where people need to have flexibility to buy what they want.
So one quick question for you, Tom, because I think what you're talking about is fascinating. Do you think, and let's just focus a little bit on healthcare, I have heard a lot of researchers especially say that purchasing healthcare is different.
Okay.
You don't agree?
No, I don't.
based on your body language? And
No, I don't. No, I don't. I think we have talked ourselves into believing that purchasing healthcare is different because we haven't given people the right tools and the right resources in order to be good consumers of what they buy for the first of the year. We focus so much on making consumer-driven healthcare in the marketplace that's very difficult. I don't think people can be consumers in the marketplace. I've been a consumer in the marketplace, and I'm good at this. It is very hard.
Yeah.
I think people can be consumers when it comes to making choice, when given the right tools and the right resources to make the right decisions. And I think we've proven that over 4 years with a population that is very diverse, with a population that's from the undereducated to the mass educated, and their ability to make this choice very wisely over a long period of time where we've had in some regions, 60 choices.
So let me just share a contrasting view from Microsoft. Everyone has different demographics, you know. What we're told is not to make this a giant exercise every year for our employees. So the Microsoft Benefits brand is highly trusted at Microsoft. We guard that trust very carefully. Our employees expect us to find and bring to them the very best benefits we can in a way of pre-selecting. For instance, we have a full replacement high deductible health plan that we seed very generously. It's a monolithic. 90-some% of people in it. We do have an HMO option in the Puget Sound. Our CEO says, I don't want my people to have to sit there with a medical plan modeler every fall, modeling this, that, and the other thing, trying to figure out which one they should pick, and then realizing maybe later that they should have gone with something else, and then we get an escalation about that. Why did you give me this decision? So in a way, you know, we do that for the benefit of the company and for the benefit of the employee. And we find that when, you know, we're in open enrollment right now, but tomorrow's the last day, I think, right, November, for us. And we find that when they can go in and spend maybe just on a typical open enrollment 5 minutes instead of 5 days, that makes them happier, more productive, and we just, you know, again, we have the advantage, we spend a fortune on benefits, and we have very good benefits, and so the choices are a little different, but we think a lot about what we put out there, and we don't introduce new things very frequently for that reason, that then it requires a big spun-up education process that we have to match against the other demands in the environment for those employees.
Now, I guess one comment and one question for you. The question is, do you take that same philosophy with your consumers?
No, we don't, but I think it's a different market. I just think it's, you know, when you're buying televisions, you're selling televisions to, to use your example, to the world. There's all kinds of different consumers from all walks of life, from all nationalities, from all economic strata. We have a very unique demographic that is our employee, at Microsoft. And so we do a lot of research. We do conjoint analyses. We do focus groups regularly. We are constantly have our finger on their pulse. So I don't think we're being presumptuous. I don't think we're telling them what they want. We're giving them what we hear they want. And we're presenting those choices in such a way that we're kind of, think of it as the bell curve with the tails. We're cutting the tails out and we're sticking with the middle of the bell curve. What did we find out about 401k plans within the past 10 years? Columbia and Penn said, you give 70 or 80 choices in core funds, what do people do? Decision paralysis, right? So what did we do? We cut back our cores. Why did we do that? Right? Same philosophy.
I would be, from what you've described, Tom, I think at the next symposium, you should just have Walgreens, and to see the interface, because I'm kind of curious about it. And it might be simpler than we actually think. I do think healthcare is more complicated than buying a television set. I understand television sets. A lot of people don't understand healthcare. So, but it is kind of fascinating. So for the next symposium, I think a great topic would be how Walgreens does this.
10 years ago, you couldn't do that because you wouldn't have had the technology or the tools.
Right. I mean,
and so
I will
5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Well, and I will tell you, 4 or 5 years ago when we put in the private exchange, the tools were not as good as they are today.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The tools are immensely better. And our people are resoundingly telling us they're better because they find the resource that they want that's going to be perfect for them so that when January 1 comes, they're not surprised, they're not shocked, and they know exactly what they bought.
Right. Well, and I think another bit of body language that I noticed was that when one panelist said we spend a fortune on benefits, I saw another panelist roll his eyes extensively and go, well, of course you did. You're Microsoft, right? Said the large retailer who talked about his margins being about this big.
What can
and
I
so,
say? Hey, if we spend a lot of money on benefits, you're going to have to pay more for clarity.
y'all over here are doing just fine.
And cigarettes.
And cigarettes.
I'm just going to
I
say.
mean, but that really does get to the heart of this, right? Which is every employer is different, every employee population is different, right? And we obviously
is
have to make each of these benefit programs, and we have to reflect the populations with which we're all hired to do right by. And so
Therein lies some of the regulatory challenge, because we all have different needs. And how do you come together to reconcile all of those needs in a regulatory environment that isn't talking to each other to try to resolve those problems?
Well, and so for the regulators or government folks that may be in the room, a great plug to perhaps encourage as much flexibility for the employer community as possible, and for our, ABC compatriots out here or anyone else from any of the associations, just a note to continue to encourage as much flexibility in our policy work as possible, because as you see, even with just four large employers here, a huge difference in opinion about how we go about meeting the different needs of different populations, all large employers, and yet, look at the different ways we go about meeting these different needs. So look, we're doing great on time.
There's
and
like
the
900
questions are like
questions.
rolling in.
For pizza.
There's body language on the screen.
Yeah,
even.
we can see our reflection.
We're just going to take Foyer in the lunch hall and just
Yeah, I
we'll
know.
answer all of your
Although
questions.
I have to say, one of them started off with CVS question, and I thought maybe you were going to punch the screen. So
There was one that said that?
yeah, there's a real one that says that.
No,
so,
I love our CVS colleagues.
yeah.
There was one question I saw that was very apropos of something we just did.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it was one of the first questions. Someone said, I'm going to paraphrase it. Hey, I'm over 50. Yeah, it's great that you're doing that one. It's great you're doing parental leave. My kids are grown. I don't have kids. What are you doing for me?
That one.
There it is. Okay. So this is a fascinating thing because it's exactly what we encountered. Microsoft, 2 years ago, we expanded our parental leave. We give 12 weeks to non-birth parents, paid weeks, of course, 20 weeks to birth parents. We're rolling it out globally right now, slightly lower levels outside the US, but very high minimums. We heard, we thought, this is where in benefits we love our job, right? We thought there's no bad news in this, right? We're going to roll this out. Everyone's going to love it.
There's always bad news.
We're going to get patted on the back. We're going to get bought beers.
I'm 54 in 2 weeks, dude. You're really killing me.
I got my prop here. So what do? We roll this out. Of course, overwhelmingly it was received well. I don't want to kind of make any false narrative here, but we did get a not insubstantial number of emails like that. Like, I'm really happy for my coworkers. By the way, not only aren't you doing this for me, but guess who covers for them when they're not there? Me. So I'm not getting the paid time, and I'm doing kind of time and a half, basically, when they're not there. So what did we do? We said, fine, we hear you, and this is that feedback loop that we constantly have, and we initiated, as of late June, caregiver leave. So now we pay for 4 weeks. If you have to leave work to care for an immediate family member, mom in Ohio or whatever is ill, we use the FMLA definition of SHC. We now pay for that. So when we rolled that out, I thought, now there can't possibly be any negative. And lo and behold, eventually, when you keep saying that, you become correct. So that's what we did. We look at it in a life cycle way. And that's it. That's a perfectly good reaction. I'm glad to see that because that validates that we do have to look. We can't be obsessed with one segment of our population. We do have multi-generations in the workforce, and we have to gear our benefits to those various life cycles.
So how many of you out here have had conversations internally about elder care? And I'm not talking, by the way, about just healthcare elder care. I'm talking about all different segments of elder care, meaning financial, housing, figuring out how to put ramps onto, your home. I'm talking all segments of elder care and thinking about how to help your employees deal with that very time-consuming issue of being, for example, that 50-something sandwich generation. Have you all talked about that internally? Raise your hands high. Okay, now how many of you think you should be having that conversation internally? Yeah, so more hands. There are more and more studies that are coming out here, and Jason, maybe this is something that we can do afterwards. I can give you several studies that show that if you all aren't thinking about it, this is one major thing to come out of this panel. You all should be thinking more about this topic. Because the numbers are going up in the hours that individuals are losing in terms of productivity, thinking about taking care of their parents. Why? People are simply living longer, and the people that are living longer simply aren't as healthy. They don't have as many choices in terms of where they're living. They're usually not working, or if they're working, they're doing gig stuff, in which case they're not getting benefits, right? There are all sorts of complicating factors, and it's usually those 50, even 60-somethings. My father is 76 years old, and he's taking care of his mother. So, yeah, I've got good genes. So, but the point is, things are just getting older, and these are people that are going to need to take care of other folks and take time off of work. Okay, other questions?
There are so many.
There are a lot there,
are.
yes.
Okay, you see, there's a hint over here on the left side.
There's a hint.
Helping employees pay student loans off is a great benefit. But is there a lower hanging fruit? At what point does it make sense to push for higher level student loan and cost of higher ed reform? Oh, a policy question. Any thoughts?
That is something that I have not come across in our government relations work on this, because it's seemingly a newish phenomenon, although I remember the student loan debt that I had coming out of school, and thank goodness it's all done. There has to be better integration of what's going on in the real world with what we do here. We tend to kind of lag behind in a lot of ways. That's just par for the course. A lot of companies, though, might look at education reform or higher ed reform as something that, well, that's not my job. But in an integrated economy, we have to think about doing that, and your input is extremely valuable. The folks at ABC may want to take a look at that as something for down the line. There is a lot of discussion now about higher ed, feature in the Washington Post over the weekend about folks who see college as a place where kids go to, learn how to dump on their country, and the criticism of that, and kind of moving away from why do we need a liberal arts education. I can't say that I support that personally, but it is. We have to think about problems in an integrated way, and I think that's a very good example.
I think the issue, Kevin, too, is that employers can only do what they can do.
Yep.
And we're faced with a terrible struggle in a workforce that comes to us. Pharmacists come to us with a 5-year, 6-year education, just like doctors, with sometimes $250,000, $300,000 in debt in tuition.
Wow.
How do you live? Their paycheck goes to pay their home, take care of their kid, and pay off their tuition. They have nothing left. There has to be something we provide these folks. And if tuition assistance gets taken away while they're in school for our pharmacy technicians, now we're taking away one of the best tax-free benefits we could ever provide to this workforce that's really struggling with tuition issues. So there's a duality here that employers can do something right now with all of these tuition assistance programs, while the reforms, which are probably going to take 3 or 4 years, get their way, get caught up, and then in 2 or 3 years we'll have something else we have to deal with in this space.
I think there's another important theme in all this. You talk about future benefit trends. What are we confronting? And it is that, and this is true in the U.S. and everywhere around the world, our employees are expecting employers to do more. We talked about this a little outside. The fact that they come to us with their life's problems or their issues, and they want the company to solve. Now, not necessarily the benefits department per se, but HR. Though, we know in Europe, governments are having to kind of step back a little from their full social safety net. So the demand for supplemental benefits is on the rise. Very briefly, we talked about the disasters, the hurricanes. Yeah. Our employees will come to, what are you going to do, Microsoft? In Puerto Rico, we were hit pretty hard. What are you going to do? Are you going to bring us relief? Are you going to guarantee us our jobs? Are you going to give us cash assistance? So you just see that. I mean, I've been in benefits for a couple decades, and you didn't see that 20 years ago. Now you see that come down. What is the company going to do? Again, the questions come in generally, but where do they typically land? HR sends them. They send them to benefits.
Well, and what was something else that you said that we were outside that you didn't think about when you were in your 20s? You said, had there been a hurricane, you actually wouldn't have asked that question of
so
HR.
when the hurricanes hit in Houston, and we were in a lot of locations, but I just wouldn't have imagined myself, like if my house were affected, I wouldn't imagine going to my employer and saying, are you going to provide the flood insurance that I didn't have or something like that. I just wouldn't have thought of it. Honestly, I'm not any better than anyone else. I think that's true for most of us. But particularly the millennials, I mean, it's true across the board, but they are coming and they're saying, how are you going to help me get through this? And you have a company willing not just to say, no, go away, that's not us, but willing to entertain these questions. I mean, we spent hours in these meetings on what we could do to provide relief, and we did airlift supplies in, like a lot of companies, where there wasn't necessarily an immediate government response. So it's putting more on us, more in different ways, and requiring us to have principles for engagement, because one of the questions I raised on this was, the Puerto Rico hurricane in Texas and all that was in our news and very prevalent for us. But what if there's an earthquake in Kazakhstan? What if there's a typhoon in Southeast Asia? Are we prepared, for those of us that are multinationals, are we prepared to step up equally in those instances and provide the same levels?
And I would clarify, it's not just our employees who are victims of these incidents saying, what are you going to do to help me? We'll have employees in Atlanta saying, what WestRock are you going to do to help our employees in Houston or in Puerto Rico? It is an expectation not only of the people who have actually suffered a loss, but it is an expectation of every coworker that we're going to help each other. And again, not,
Absolutely.
15 years ago, we weren't doing that.
So there are probably about 10 or 15 questions about private exchanges or our choice options. You can bring those to me separately. There's a lot of rationale and a lot of thought that we put into what we did. So I'm happy to answer those off the table.
One thing that I did want to mention, because there are also a lot of questions here about student loans. One thing that I did want to mention, and perhaps some of you out there are involved with this, there is a movement here in Washington right now going on where there are CEOs getting involved on Capitol Hill, actually having meetings with some folks at Department of Labor. I do believe that Ivanka and President Trump, I believe, was supposed to have these meetings, but then I think it was actually one of the days where there was a bomb threat, and so he couldn't make the meeting. I know this only because our CEO was supposed to attend and then couldn't because he wasn't there, where they're going to Capitol Hill talking to the government about extending different tax relief to different types of trades. So learning not just getting student tax relief, not just for four-year colleges, but also for different types of skilled workers. So if you want to become a plumber, you need that education, you're going to get some tax relief on that too. So it's actually a really interesting conversation happening on the Hill. And what I find very interesting about it is that it's mushing together both student loan conversations, it's also mushing together immigration issues. And so it's touching a lot of kind of hot button issues in Washington, which may be one of the reasons why we haven't heard a lot about it. But the conversations are happening, and it's with some CEOs of some pretty serious companies. So something just for you all to maybe be aware of, and maybe have some conversations with your own CEOs if they aren't currently part of that, and your company needs more of those types of skilled workers. Well, I want to take a moment just to thank the four of you so much for what I think was an outstanding panel, and thank all of you for your time and your attention. Thank you all, and I think we're on to the next panel.